Hi, everyone. Welcome again to Ivy English. I'm Bruce.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today we have two short articles for you, as we usually do, not always, but usually near the beginning of the month. We three will read through a couple of paragraph or two long articles and discuss them. The first one is about the 8-year-old bestseller.
好，那中文的标题是独一无二的馆藏，男童偷塞进图书馆的自制书啊。那这个中文标题当然跟英文标题不是翻译的关系。好，那英文标题就是8岁的这个 bestseller 就是一个最畅销书啊。当然这里不是只说是畅销书8岁啊，这个地方应该指的是他作者是8岁。
Okay, I'll read through both paragraphs first, and then we'll go back sentence by sentence. When you think of a library's waiting list, the books that come to mind probably include fantasy epics or thrilling crime novels. What about a story describing a young boy who travels to the North Pole, chases a moose through a time portal, and then gets eaten by a giant turkey? That is currently the most requested book at one library in the U.S. The story was handwritten by 8-year-old Dylan Helbig. Dylan loves to write, but decided his usual readers, Mom and Dad, were not enough. To share his story with more people, he sneakily placed his book on a library shelf while visiting with his grandmother one day. The librarians were surprised by the unexpected addition, but they enjoyed the story so much that they decided to keep it.
So another George R.R. Martin or whatever? Like the guy that wrote the Game of Thrones series that became the HBO show. He started writing as an 8-year-old. He made his money in grade school selling his stories. And that was so he learned at a very early age which sold and which did not sell because he was directly selling to his audience and getting direct feedback.
Wow.
Yeah.
好，所以又一个天才作者。
Yeah.
Yeah.
He understands the importance of marketing, I guess.
Yeah. 他如果像刚刚 Angela 是讲的，8岁就开始这个写东西，然后呢，在念小学的时候就开始可以把你的作品卖给同学啊，那你很快就可以知道说什么东西卖得出去，什么东西卖不出去，那该写什么才会有市场。
So our story today begins with the sentence, when you think of a library's waiting list, the books that come to mind probably include fantasy epics or thrilling crime novels. So what's a waiting list? A waiting list is a list of people who are waiting for a book to come in. If a book is particularly popular and the library has not bought enough copies of it, they'll be like, okay, well, XYZ book isn't here, but we can put you on the waiting list. And when it comes in, after Sally, Martin, Josh, and 60 other people have read it, you can also read this book. That's a waiting list. And so when you think of this waiting list, the books that come to mind, the kind of books that you expect to be on a waiting list that come to mind include fantasy epic. An epic is a long, involved story with many elements. Or thrilling crime novels. A thrilling anything is something that makes your heart beat faster and you feel very excited about it.
好，所以 when you think of 当你想到一个 library 它的 waiting list 就是等待名单啊，等着要借某本书的名单啊，那要注意这个地方不要念成 waiting list 啊 waiting list 变成是一个在等待的一个名单啊，是那个名单自己在等，不知道等什么东西。好，不对啊，是 waiting list， 所以它是一个等待名单。好，所以你想到一个图书馆的等待名单的时候呢，那 the books that come to mind come to mind 就是想到，而且通常是马上想到的意思。好，有的时候我们会看到 spring to mind， 那 spring 好，那感觉起来跳得更快啊。所以当你想到这个图书馆的 waiting list 的时候呢，你想到的，你马上会想到的啊，这个书呢 the books 啊，这些书 probably 可能包括什么呢？ fantasy epics 啊 fantasy 就是奇幻的 啊，那 epics 就是小说啊，那有的时候我们会讲 fantasy novels 啊，但是因为后面会讲到 novels， 所以他这里换了一个，他不讲 novel， 他讲 epic。所谓的 epic 通常是一个很长篇的东西啊，它里面有很伟大的一些这个主题啊，然后呢有冒险啊等等的因素啊。好，那所以你想到大概就是一些奇幻史诗啊，或者是 thrilling 啊 ，thrilling 就是刺激的啊，会让你心跳加速的这个 crime novels。犯罪小说，那一样重音在前面 crime novels 啊，不要念 crime novels 啊，是 crime novels， 它是一种小说啊，是犯罪小说。
Okay, so our waiting list that we introduced in the first sentence had a couple of examples. What kind of books would you expect to have to wait to read from a library? Fantasy epics, thrilling crime novels. Now, the next sentence asks the question, what about a story describing la la la? This means, would this kind of story come to mind for you if you were thinking about or had to put up with a waiting list? What about a story describing a young boy who travels to the North Pole, chases a moose through a time portal, and then gets eaten by a giant turkey?
I'd read this story in a heartbeat.
It's odd, but it's attractive to me as well. I just would like to see how he puts all these things together.
Exactly.
The North Pole, as we know, Beiji, that's the so-called top of the world. If you live in the northern hemisphere, we think of the North Pole as the top of the world. When you go down to Australia...
When you're upside down there, then the South Pole feels like the top of the world. But
Exactly.
It's all the blood rushing to your head, really.
And they have maps in a lot of stores that do just that.
Well, if I lived in Australia, I would too.
It's just perspective.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a moose is a very large deer and is found only in the northern hemisphere, especially in North America.
Oh my gosh, calling a moose a large deer is like calling a wolf a large dog. Okay.
Well,
it's just... If you ever seen a picture of a moose, there's a reason these are called megafauna.
Yes.
If a moose walks by your car and you're sitting in the driver's seat, you will only see its thighs. You will not even see its belly, okay? It could step over your car or on your car at will.
Preferably around my car.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a time portal. Portal means a gate or doorway from one time period to another. We often see this idea in science fiction movies. And then the boy gets eaten by a giant turkey. Turkey is...
I guess another form of megafauna that just doesn't exist on this planet.
Think of a very large chicken and with much more color to it and very nasty. They are... bad-tempered birds.
So I'm getting a theme here. If a wolf is a bad-tempered dog and a moose is a bad-tempered deer, then a turkey is a bad-tempered chicken? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's bad-tempered today. 啊，所以今天有人脾气不太好，看到什么动物都觉得他脾气不好哈。那刚刚这个 Angela 老师他用到2次啊，一个字啊 ，megafauna 啊，那就是很大的动物的意思啊。那它的拼法是 MEGA。Fauna 好 ，Fauna 它可以泛指动物啊，那 mega 就是很巨大的意思 ，MEGA 啊，那因为像麋鹿是非常大的啊，我记得我之前到阿拉斯加找亲戚的时候，他们的停车场常常有麋鹿在那边，蛮恐怖的啊，因为麋鹿看起来真的是比车子还要高啊，大一只啊，我就问他说，那你们怎么办？他不怎么办啊？你能怎么办？你等他高兴了自己会走掉。
对。
好，所以呢，这个接下来我们看这个句，他说 What about 后面的他的意思就是说，底下我要讲的这个东西，你觉得如何啊？所以刚刚提到说如果讲到 waiting list， 你想到的是奇幻史诗啊，你想到的是刺激的犯罪小说，那底下这个你觉得会不会是你的 waiting list？会有 waiting list 这样的一个书呢？好，什么样的书呢？或者什么样的故事呢？你觉得一个故事，然后这故事 describing 是讲那个修饰那个故事，这个故事描述的是一个年轻的小男孩 a young boy who travels to 他 旅行到北极的 North Pole， 然后呢 chases a moose， 他追逐一只麋鹿啊，而且是穿过，因为他追着麋鹿就穿过了一个 time portal。好 ，a time portal 就是时空的传送门啊，那个 portal 就是一个 gate。然后呢，接下来他就 gets eaten 啊，被吃掉了 by a giant turtle， 被一只巨无霸的
turkey。Oh,
turkey. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
As one.
Yeah. Another megafauna.
Yes.
OK. 好，所以对不起，我看错是 turkey 啊，它被一只巨无霸的火鸡吃掉了啊，它可能这个 Thanksgiving 它吃太多火鸡了，这一次被火鸡报复了。
So that book is currently the most requested book at one library in the U.S. So this 8-year-old author, has become super popular at one library. Currently means right now.
好，所以 that 就是我们刚刚讲的这个故事呢，目前 currently 是 the most requested book， 就是最多人要求要看的书，也就是最热门的书。好 ，at one library in the U.S. 在美国的一家图书馆，它目前是最多人要看的一本书。
Okay, second paragraph.The story was handwritten by 8-year-old Dylan Helbig. Handwritten means he did not use a typewriter or a computer. He wrote with a pen or pencil, and we now learn his name, Dylan Helbig.
那这个故事呢，是8岁的 Dylan Helbig 他用手写的。那用手写的，我觉得比较珍贵的是，换句话，他不太可能有太多办法去 revise 啊，他可能就写出来，再稍微改一改就出版了啊，所以是非常厉害的。因为写作，尤其是作家，通常需要用电脑啊去大量的修改，但他不用修改，他就这样出来了。
So Dylan loves to write, but he decided his usual readers, his mom and dad, were not enough. If you only have 2 readers, and they're more likely going to be like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of
want... Especially if it's written by your child.Well,
right, exactly. So he knows his mom and dad are going to be like, oh, nice, honey.
Yeah.
And he wants a more critical audience, maybe? At least a larger one.
Or more capable readers, probably. 所以呢，他怎么样呢？他 loves to write， 他很喜欢写作。但是呢，他 decided， 就他后来觉得这 decided 是决定，但在这里其实是他想一想之后觉得是这样子他的 usual readers， 他平常的读者，也就是说平常读他书的人呢，就是谁？就是他的爸爸妈妈。他觉得这个不够当然我们刚刚都开玩笑了总之他觉得说他希望更多人读他的东西。
To share his story with more people, more than his parents, he sneakily placed his book on a library shelf.He was visiting his grandmother one day who lived near a library. He went to the library with a copy of his book and sneakily placed the book. You cannot just go into a library and put books you don't want on the shelves.
They will be taken off by the librarians.
Right. So he did this without making sure nobody was looking, and then we find out what happens in the next sentence.
好，那 to 就是为了 share 就是分享 his story， 为了要分享他的故事 with 跟谁分享呢 with more people 跟更多人分享他的故事。他 sneakily 就是偷偷地 secretly 他就 placed his book on， 把他的书放在哪里呢？放在一个 library shelf， 一个图书馆的书架上面就是图书馆的一个书架上面。那这什么时候放的呢？ While visiting.With his grandmother， 就是跟他奶奶一起去图书馆的时候呢，有一天他跟他奶奶一起去图书馆的时候呢，他就把书通通放上去了。
And the librarians were surprised by the unexpected addition, because librarians, one of their jobs is to go through the shelves and make sure they're organized and make sure everything in its right place and everything that is supposed to be there is, and everything that isn't supposed to be there isn't. So they came across this book and they're like, this book is not in our catalog. It does not have a Library of Congress number. It's not got even a publisher number. Do we keep this or do we not keep it?But they read the story and they enjoyed it so much that they decided, heck, we're going to keep it. And they kept it on their shelf.
那这个图书馆员呢 they were surprised. 他们很讶异他们看到这个 unexpected addition unexpected 就是意料之外的，突如其来的 addition 就是增加的这本书，他们感到很意外，但是他们很喜欢这本书喜欢到什么程度呢？ They enjoyed the story 或者喜欢这个故事so much that they decided to keep it. 他们决定把这个故事留下来。
Which gives me a really great idea. Like, teachers should collect the coolest stories from their kids. Or ask the kids if they want to have stories collected, ask the kids permission first and be like, can I put this on our personal class shelf?
Right.
So that everyone can enjoy it. And most kids are going to say no, but one or two might say yes, and that might be really interesting.
They might sneakily place their book on the shelf anyway.
Right. Hey.
Okay, our next story here. DHL's newest robotic employee.
中文标题是 DHL 导入机器人担任物流搬运工。
Boston Dynamics, the robotics company most famous for producing the robotic dog Spot, has announced plans to enter the logistics industry. The company announced that global shipping company DHL would employ its pallet stacking robot. The robot, named Stretch, has a robotic arm that can lift boxes of up to 23 kilograms and move them to different locations. While this design might sound simple, Stretch must be able to pick up boxes of varying sizes and move its arm in multiple directions. Boston Dynamics hopes its new device will help alleviate the current labor shortage and improve working conditions in the shipping industry. Okay, it's just one paragraph, but we better get ready and get started. Boston Dynamics, the robotics company most famous for producing the robotic dog Spot, has announced plans to enter the logistics industry. We start with the name of a company, Boston Dynamics. It's a robotics company, a company that designs and builds robots, including one, I hadn't heard of this, but I don't follow this industry at all. Boston Dynamics made or produced a dog, a robot, or robotic is the adjective dog, named Spot, which used to be a very common dog's name in the United States. Boston Dynamics has announced plans. They expect to enter the logistics industry. Logistics it's even a science, but it's an industry of collecting things, organizing them, and then sending them out.
OK， 好，我们看这个句子。好，这个 Boston Dynamics 就是波士顿动力公司。好，然后呢，后面一个同位语，它是什么样的一个公司呢？它是 the， 所以是特定的一个 robotics company， 一个机器人的公司。哈 ，that is famous for 或者 that is most famous for， 它是一家机器人公司。它最有名的是什么事情呢？是它 producing。它生产了 the robotic dog 这个机器狗 Spot 这是很有名的一只机器狗，所以就介绍你这是波士顿动力公司他们就是生产 Spot 那家公司。那他们干嘛呢？ has announced 他们宣布了 plans 表示不止一个计划，他们好几个计划或者一个计划里面有很多部分。他宣布了计划要干嘛呢？要 to enter 进入这个logistics industry 就是物流产业logistics 就是我们讲的所谓的后勤后勤包括后勤补给、后勤运输。所以现在呢，这个logistics 就是指我们的物流，那 industry 就是一个产业。那各位特别注意这个 enter 这个是英文用这么简单的一个字就可以了，但是其实各位可以注意到我们杂志上的翻译，杂志把它翻译成跨足这个翻译蛮好的，但是各位要想，当你看到中文的跨足某一个企业的时候，你就要想其实你不用去想你那个脚还是什么 foot 还是 leg， 跨足某个企业其实就用 enter 就可以了。
The company announced that global shipping company DHL would employ its pallet stacking robot. To employ something is to put it to work. And the most common meaning of this is to pay somebody for work. But if you're employing a robot, you're obviously not paying it, which is the interesting thing to consider here. And it's a pallet stacking robot. Pallet is a pallet is a unit that is used for shipping these days. It's a flat like a flat wooden box on which things are stacked and then usually wrapped to the pallet with plastic. And it's easily picked up by a forklift. And so it's an easy, fast way to move quantities of goods around. And so this robot is using this pallet and forklift system that we've already been using for, I don't know, at least 60 years. So we've used this system for a while, and the robot is taking advantage of this standardization to become a robot that can pick up pallets and put it where they should go without needing a forklift operator.
好，那这家公司呢，他们宣布全球性的，也就是国际性的 shipping company 运输企业 DHL 啊，这家公司呢 would employ 会雇用啊，那这里用雇用很有趣，因为它雇用的其实是机器人。那各位还要注意到这个 would 用 would 的原因，它其实就是 will 的过去式，因为这个句子的主要动词 announced 是过去式，所以这个地方 will 要改成 would 啊，他们会雇用啊，它的 pallet 就是托盘啊，就堆高机装卸或者是搬运货物用的那个托盘啊，或者是木栈板啊，也有人把它叫做集装架。那这个堆高机，你刚刚像这个 Angel 老师有讲到 forklift 啊 ，fork F-O-R-K， 然后再加上 L-I-F-T， 好，就是 forklift 堆高的这个一个装置。好，那 pallet 也有人把它翻成堆垛，好，这个托盘堆垛。好，那总之就是这样子一个 stacking 这个堆叠的这样的一个机器人。
The robot named Stretch. Well, where do they get these names? Spot for the robotic dog and Stretch for a pallet operating machine?
You need to stretch.
Well, because you need to stretch, but stretch is a common nickname for tall people in high school. And I know this because I was a tall person in high school.
Oh.
And so what they're trying to do is name these robots very friendly names so that people will feel that they're cute and not see them as a threat.
Well said. Okay, so Boston Dynamics is calling its pallet stacking robot Stretch. What does it look like? Well, it has a robotic arm, just one arm that can lift boxes of up to 23 kilograms and move them to different locations. I can picture this in my mind, but even in English, I have a hard time explaining what it would look like. A picture would explain it immediately.
Well, yeah. I mean, but honestly, if you have access to Google, you can just Google Boston Dynamics and see. You can also see all the military robots they're developing. The soldier robots.
Yeah, 所以各位如果有兴趣看看它到底长什么样子，其实去 Google 一下哈，看那个它的 image 就可以看到了。好，所以这个地方讲到说啊 ，the robot named Stretch has a robotic arm that can lift boxes of up to 23 kilograms and move them to different locations. 所以 the robot 这个机器人呢 named Stretch， 它的名字叫做 Stretch， 然后主要动词 has， 它有什么呢？有一个 robotic arm， 一个机械手背。这个机械手背 that 就是指这个机械手背，所以在这个 arm 后面 a robotic arm 后面接一个形容词子句来修饰这个机械手背啊，告诉你这机械手背可以干嘛呢？这个机械手背可以 can lift， 它可以举起 boxes of， 它可以举起一些箱子，这些箱子呢可以 up to 可以高达23公斤的箱子啊，所以力气蛮大的啊。然后呢 move them， 把这些箱子 them 就是指 boxes 啊，所以把这些箱子搬动到 different locations， 搬动到不同的地点啊，所以力气蛮大的，而且它不是只能举起来而已，它还举起来还可以帮你搬动。
So while this design may sound simple, Stretch must be able to pick up boxes of varying sizes and move its arm in multiple directions. And people are like, well, we've been using robots to build cars in factories forever, it seems. Like my sister programmed factory robots in the 80s. So why is this special? Well, those car factory robots are fixed in place. They're attached to the floor. This robot has to be able to move around and still offset all these loads. That is a much trickier physical problem, and Boston Dynamics has managed to solve it.
Yeah, 那他说，虽然这个设计呢，也许听起来还蛮简单的，就是搬东西而已嘛，但其实呢 ，Stretch 它必须要能够 pick up， 它要能拿起 boxes of varying sizes. Varying 就是同类，但是彼此不同的啊，所以它必须要拿起大大小小不同的箱子。而且呢 move its arm， 把它的手背移动，是 in multiple directions， 在往很多个方向移动，因为它要搬起来从 A 拿到 B 点等等的，所以其实是很复杂的。
Boston Dynamics hopes its new device, Stretch, will help alleviate the current labor shortage. Alleviate is to make something less bad. It is to take care of a problem, and there is a current labor shortage. There aren't enough people to do that kind of work in many factories throughout the world, and improve working conditions in the shipping industry. Because if you're a person just lifting heavy boxes all day from one place to another, whether it's with your body strength or with a forklift, that can get pretty routine, and that may be one reason why it's hard for these companies to profit from laborers who don't want to be doing that work. That's why they're trying the robots.
好，那所以这家公司呢，这个波士顿动力公司，他们希望他们新的 device， 就是新的这个装置呢，可以帮忙alleviate， 就是缓解那个 al 这个字首就是 to 的意思那个 alleviate 就是 light 轻的意思所以就把它变轻的意思。那它通常的缓解，例如你可以 alleviate suffering 你的痛苦或者是 stress 你的压力，都可以用 alleviate 这个动词你也可以 alleviate a problem。好，所以他们可以缓解目前 current 的这个 labor shortage 劳动力的短缺而且可以 improve 改善 working conditions 就是工作的环境或者工作的条件我们也讲 living conditions 就是生活条件或生活环境所以改善工作条件那在哪一个产业里面改善呢？在这个 shipping industry， 在运输业里面改善劳动力短缺还有这个工作条件不够好的这些问题。
Well, that's it for this article, indeed both articles for today. Please tune in soon. In a couple of days, we'll be back with one long article for you. Until then,
bye-bye.